You ever met someone who just gives you that feeling, that quiet, deep down wrongness? The kind of person who laughs too easily when something's not funny, whose eyes don't quite match their smile. That is Joanna Dennehy. On paper, she's an Englishwoman from Hertfordshire, but behind those bright eyes and a little smirk was one of the most chilling cases of female violence modern Britain has ever seen. I'm not talking about someone who snapped, no. Joanna didn't lose control, she liked what she did. Joanna Christina Dennehy was born in August 1982. Her childhood, by most accounts, wasn't unusually tragic. That's one of the things that makes this story so eerie. People like to find a reason, some trauma, some long history of abuse, something they can point to and say that is where the monster was made. But Dennehy's background doesn't give you that easy answer. Her parents, Kathleen and Kevin, were working class people who tried their best. Kevin was in security and Kathleen worked in retail. They kept a neat home, looked after Joanna and her younger sister Maria. They wasn't perfect, no family is, but there's no evidence of the kind of cruelty that would predict what was coming. She did well in school at first, bright, sharp-tongued, a little rebellious. Teachers noticed that she had curious duality even then. Charming one moment and cruel the next. She could talk anyone into liking her if she wanted to. She was the kind of girl who could twist the truth without blinking. Manipulative, yes, but also magnetic. People listened when she spoke. That would become her most dangerous weapon later on. When Joanna hit her mid-teens, things started to drift. She got bored. School did not interest her. Rules were there to be broken. She started drinking heavily, running away for days, dating older men. Her parents tried everything, grounding her, pleading with her, but Joanna had that rebellious defiance that only escalates when someone tells her no. And soon she was gone from home for good, into a life that would take her nowhere good. By her early 20s, she was living in the eastern part of England, Peterborough, mostly. Not exactly a glamorous life. She'd had 2 kids with a man named John Trenner. He said later that when he met her, she was beautiful, funny and exciting. For a while, they lived together like any young couple trying to make ends meet. But John would eventually learn that excitement wasn't always a good thing. Joanna could switch from affections to icy in seconds. Arguments were explosive, sometimes violent. Then one day, just after Christmas, Joanna walked out. She left her home, her partner and her 2 little kids without notice. No goodbye, no note, just gone. She drifted through various towns, picking up odd jobs, sometimes selling herself for money, sometimes depending on whomever she could charm. She met petty criminals and drifters. She started to use illegal substances. People who knew her at that point said her moods were all over the place, that she'd go from laughing to screaming in an instant. And behind that anger was something colder, darker, something that seemed to enjoy chaos for its own sake. Most serial killers fit a type. They spiral slowly, escalate their fantasies. Maybe they start with cruelty, then assault, then kill. Dennehy, she jumped straight into it. No animals, no warming up. When she turned violent, she went all in. Joanna often bragged about being in control. She wanted power, but not the slow, manipulative kind some people play with. She liked physical control. She liked to humiliate. Several men later told police they thought she enjoyed them being scared. Joanna is now in her early 30s. She's restless, couch surfing, flirting her way into different people's homes. Her closest companion is Gary Stretch, a man who's 6'7", soft-spoken, looks intimidating, but truth be told, was more of a follower than anything. He called Joanna his best mate, though the dynamic was clear. She was the leader and he was her shadow. He would do what she told him to do. There's also another man, Lucas Laboweski. He is a Polish immigrant, 31, who's an easygoing guy who worked odd jobs and liked to party. He met Joanna through friends. They drank together and flirted. But something about her fascinated him. And something about him, maybe his attraction, maybe his trust, hooked her interest too. What nobody saw was that Joanna was already talking openly, even proudly, about wanting to kill someone. People thought it was a joke. She said she wanted to have fun, explore how it feels to kill. You hear that in a pub, you might roll your eyes, chalk it up to edgy talk, but she was not joking. Her behaviour turned darker. She began carrying a knife everywhere she went. Not a small one either, the kind with a long, gleaming blade. She'd pull it out, play with it during conversations, run her finger along the edge. Sometimes she'd hold it out toward whoever she was speaking to, smiling, eyes locked. She knew it made people uncomfortable, and she likes that. Then come a story people who were there would never forget. One acquaintance said Joanna looked at her one night, grinned and said, "I want to kill a man, just to know what it feels like." The friend laughed it off, because who really believes that? But by March of 2013, Joanna Dennehy wasn't just saying it anymore, she was preparing. She had moved into a small dingy house owned by Kevin Lee, a property developer who also happened to be her landlord and occasional lover. Lee was 48, polished, married, father of 2. He knew she had a temper, knew she hung around sketchy people, but he could not resist her. Everyone said Joanna had a way of making men feel like they were the only person in the room. That kind of charm's a dangerous thing when it's attached to someone with a taste for destruction. Around this same time, Joanna's paranoia and instability were peaking. She talked freely about violence, often pairing it with laughter. She didn't sound distressed, she sounded excited. She began to confide that she'd been chosen somehow, like she was built for violence. Friends noticed her fixation with the movie Natural Born Killers. She seemed to see herself in that world of chaos and blood. Gary Stretch, her towering sidekick, followed her everywhere. If she said let's go, he went. If she said bring him, he would do it. That little loyalty, that obedience would make him an accomplice in things worse than he'd ever imagined. And at this point, she can almost sense that she's teetering. There's that cocktail of arrogance, anger and boredom, the kind that only leads one way. Somewhere in her mind, Joanna decided she wasn't just going to hurt someone, she was going to kill, and she was going to enjoy it. When people talk about killers, they often describe a moment, that point where fantasy becomes action. For Joanna, that line wasn't blurry, she crossed it like it was nothing. No hesitation, no second thoughts. She'd been talking for weeks about wanting to kill, saying it like she was talking about grabbing a drink or taking a drive. And then one day, she did. It started with Lucas Laboweski, that friend who thought he was meeting her for another casual hangout. He'd been texting her, clearly interested, and she lured him over with a message that sounded flirty. Come by, bring a bottle. That was typical Joanna, confident, teasing, controlling. When Lucas arrived, Joanna greeted him warmly. She kissed him. Nobody knows exactly how things unfolded in that tiny Peterborough house, but what's clear is this. At some point, she pulled out her knife. There wasn't a fight or a scream heard by neighbours, just silence. The wound was deep, targeted, merciless. Afterwards, she stood over him, admiring her work. She later told someone, almost casually, I killed him because it was more fun than I thought it would be. But now she had a body on her hands. She phoned her friend Gary Stretch and another man named Leslie Layton. Together they wrapped Lucas's body and loaded it into a car. Joanna was calm, even cheerful about it. She gave orders like they were just doing a home project. They drove to a remote ditch outside Peterborough and dumped him there. Just another figure in the English countryside, hidden under branches and mud. Her next victim was John Chapman, a 56-year-old man who lived in the same property for which she worked occasionally. John was ex-military, he was a tough guy and quiet. He liked to keep to himself, and most people found him decent, even friendly when he wasn't drinking. That made his murder even colder. This time she didn't lure John with flirtation, she just attacked him. Investigators later pieced together what probably happened. He was in his room and she turned up with that same blade. It was sudden, vicious and deliberate. She later joked about stabbing him in the chest and neck, mocking the way he looked at her in the end. People who heard her retelling said she was grinning while she described her actions. Once again, Stretch helped dispose of the body. They took John's remains just like before and dumped him in another ditch, not far from Lucas's. 2 men dead, 2 ditches, both out of sight. You'd think someone might panic after that. 2 murders in a matter of days is a lot to keep straight. Disposal, secrecy, guilt. But Joanna wasn't panicking. She was enjoying herself. She bragged to friends she wanted to kill 9 men in total. All of them men, she said, because men are easy prey. That quote would later haunt the headlines. Her 3rd and final murder happened quickly, almost predictably. This one shocked even the people who thought they knew her. Kevin Lee, her landlord, her sometimes lover, the man who'd given her money and a place to stay. Kevin trusted her completely. Maybe he thought he was special, that she saw him differently. He didn't realise that to Joanna, everyone was disposable. On the 29th of March 2013, Good Friday of all days, she called him over under the pretense of a visit. She flirted, she smiled, but by the time anyone realised he was missing, she had already killed him. This time there was an eerie detail. After stabbing Kevin to death, she dressed him in a black sequin dress, women's clothing, and drove his body to another ditch. She told her accomplices it looked funny that way. That's the level of mockery we're dealing with. She treated human life like a joke. Kevin Lee's body was the first one found. A local farmer spotted it the next day. When police arrived, they found the partial trail that led to the other 2. 3 men, all connected to Joanna, all killed within a short span. Now suddenly, the case went from quiet to national, because something about this killer, the woman with a wide smile and ice-cold eyes, caught the media instantly. A woman serial killer in Britain is rare. One who kills strangers and acquaintances purely for amusement, almost unheard of. Meanwhile, Joanna was on the run, with Gary Stretch and a new tag-along. She left Peterborough and headed southwest, driving through towns, drinking, joking about what they'd done. What's horrifying is how casual she was. She stopped at shops, flirting with strangers, laughed with cashiers, all while there were bodies lining ditches a few miles behind her. She didn't hide either. She bragged openly to people she met that she was a killer. She told one man she'd stabbed 3 men already and wanted to kill more. Most people assumed she was drunk or kidding. They had no idea they were chatting with one of the most wanted women in the country. Along the way, she decided she wasn't finished. Random violence appealed to her. In Hereford, she and Stretch targeted 2 strangers. Both men, both stabbed. Luckily, both survived. The police were now tracking the attacks, realising fast that they were linked. The manhunt went countrywide. Joanna was armed, unpredictable, and apparently having fun with the chaos. Police warnings went out describing her as extremely dangerous. When authorities finally caught up with her, it wasn't cinematic. She was arrested without a fight in a local field near Hereford on the 2nd of April 2013. Officers said she was calm, polite even, during the arrest. But when they looked at her hands, her boots, her clothes, the evidence was clear. And her attitude? Defiant. She smiled for her mugshots, the same smirk that got her through her whole life. In custody, she predicted that the usual excuses would come up. Rough childhood, bad boyfriends, self-defense. But she didn't need any of that. She said plainly, "I kill to have fun. I do not care if you understand." These words chilled even hardened detectives. Her accomplices, Stretch, Leighton and a few others, gave varying accounts later. They painted her as the leader, the dominant one, the one whose word was law. The prosecution would later agree. She was in control, she directed everything. Her companions weren't masterminds, they were just errand boys. The sheer lack of remorse was the standout feature of Joanna Dennehy. Even in interviews, psychologists noted she seemed almost proud. She played to the cameras, teased officers, and openly said she was bored with the interviews. You can see clips from the investigations where she's laughing, flipping her hair as if she's a celebrity, not a murderer. Joanna was described as having classic antisocial and borderline personality traits. impulsivity, lack of empathy, manipulation, and thrill-seeking. But there was something more, something rarer. She exhibited what psychiatrists called psychopathic charm. She could switch between charisma and coldness as if changing channels. One doctor noticed that she enjoyed controlling the emotional temperature of a room. In their words, she wasn't detached from her crimes. She was proud of them. That pride made her unique among British female offenders. She didn't kill for revenge or out of jealousy or even to hide another crime. She killed simply because she wanted to. As the legal proceedings started, everyone expected a long, twisted trial. There was plenty of evidence, forensic, witness testimony, DNA and text messages. But in a move that stunned both victims' families and the media, Joanna Dennehy pleaded guilty to all charges. No deal, no delays, no attempt to deny anything. She just said, "Yes, I did it." When the judge asked if she understood the consequences, she said she did. Even said she didn't want to waste anyone's time. Some saw that as arrogance, some as boredom. Either way, it ended the trial before it could really begin. But those few courtroom sessions were unforgettable. People who were there said she walked in like it was a show, dressed neatly, hair-brushed, confident. When asked to confirm her name, she smirked. When the details of the murders were read aloud, she didn't flinch. She even interrupted once to correct an error, coolly, as though they were reading the wrong line off a script about her life. Families of her victims sat watching, broken and furious. Kevin Lee's widow said later she couldn't bear how Joanna seemed to enjoy the atmosphere, how she smiled at moments when others cried. And that smile, that's what reporters kept writing about. Her expressions in court become an eerie signature, calm, composed, untroubled. When it came time for sentencing, the judge didn't hold back. At London's Old Bailey in February 2014, Joanna Dennehy was given a whole life tariff, one of only a handful of women in British history to receive it. That means she will never be released, never eligible for parole. She will die in prison. To give you an idea of how rare that sentence is, Britain's other whole-life female prisoners include Myra Hindley and Rose West. That is the league Joanna Dennehy has joined, and she didn't seem to mind. During sentencing, the judge told her, "You are a cruel, calculating, selfish and manipulative serial killer. You have shown no remorse. Your crimes are exceptionally serious and cause intense distress and fear." Joanna's only response? She smirked again and looked around the courtroom, unblinking. After the trial, psychiatrists continued to analyse her. The consensus was that she displayed what's known as instrumental violence, killing for purpose, not emotion. She used murder like a tool to feel excitement. One psychologist called her a textbook example of psychopathy in female form. In prison, her behaviour didn't calm. Within a year, she tried to escape, along with 2 other inmates. She plotted to overpower guards and scale the walls. They were caught before they could attempt it. Later, reports surfaced of her writing letters to another notorious murderer behind bars. Letters describing herself as a dangerous fantasy. Prison psychologists described her as still manipulative and still calculating. Today, Joanna Dennehy sits in a secure unit of an English high security prison. She's in her early 40s now. She'll never walk free again. Occasionally, reports leak out. A guard mentioned her smirking during evaluations, or a psychologist noting her charm hasn't faded. She still has that same grin that first fooled people into thinking she was harmless. That grin is what gets remembered by almost everyone who's ever looked into the eyes. There's a line a detective once said, "Joanna Dennehy doesn't just commit violence, she carries it with her." And that is the legacy she leaves. A smile no one trusts, a story no one forgets, and 3 men who never got the chance to see her for what she truly was. Thank you for listening today, and remember, stay behind the yellow tape.